Okay, well, thank you. We had some very good and interesting sessions this morning so far. I just wanted to specifically mention the session from the gentleman from Group M, Neil. I don't know where he is. See, I am Dutch. I'm from the Netherlands. And I moved halfway across the world from Amsterdam to New York, just so that I didn't have to be reminded of our soccer team didn't qualifying for the European Cup. So I come here this morning, all pumped up to talk about programmatic. And what do I see? TV spent down in the Netherlands because of the Euro Cup. So, but I had some time to recover, so I'm pumped up again. I would like to talk, 50 minutes is not enough to talk to about all the details of programmatic. So I just really want to give you a high-level overview and then hopefully maybe have a little time for Q&A, because I like to make it interactive, to make it a little bit interesting. So with that, I think you don't have the right PowerPoint loaded, but so Visible World is founded in 2000, and we are a company, a technology company that was developing or is developing technology for advanced advertising. I wish I could have said that we started to develop programmatic systems for TV in 2000, but nobody knew what that meant at that time. So we were building systems for targeting, for versioning, and in general to make television advertising better and more automated. And it turned out that some of these tools are very useful to actually implement programmatic in television. We were, as some of you may know, we were acquired by Comcast in last year, 2015. So we now have an even bigger goal to provide value to the television ecosystem. Another thing that maybe is good to know about us is that we are not a digital company. We are not a digital company that transferred to television. We are a company that is grounded in television. That's where we started, and that's what we're growing. That's what we're invested in. Another interesting maybe thing is that we eat our own dog food. So we don't just develop the technology for programmatic. We have a subsidiary called Audiencebased who uses that technology to create an unwired network and to sell programmatic and sell audiences. And they have been doing that for about 3-4 years. And for us, quite frankly, that's a really good source. It basically means that we have to prove what we're building, because that's how we make money with it. That's not the only way we make money with it, but that's one way of making money with it. So let's look at programmatic in digital. So these charts show, the black bars show revenue, programmatic revenue on digital, and then the red lines show growth, year-over-year growth. So the left box shows spending on display. And you can see that it's quite already a mature, I mean, there's a substantial business there, and it's kind of sort of already matured in a way. Then we see mobile, and we see programmatic video ad spending on digital. Very new, very fast growing. And so I think the one thing to take away from this is that programmatic, it's not just some term, it's really already a tool, an important tool in the toolbox for digital. So interestingly enough, when we talk about programmatic, I find that, especially for television, that it's a term that everybody wants to do it, but there's not like a single good definition for it. Everybody has their own thinking about what it really means. And so a lot of that thinking has to do with automation and ease of use. But I think it's actually more than that. Because we have to remember when digital folks use programmatic, they're using automated systems to buy targeted audiences, to use data to target audiences, to buy them, to execute them, to execute the campaigns, and to do measurement and to create accountability. And so when we talk about programmatic in television, we shouldn't just, it shouldn't just mean we're creating an API so that you can do just business as usual. We're creating an API so that you can buy linear schedules, just the way it always was done. I don't think that's doing programmatic justice. So in reality, there's other components to it, and automation is an important one. I'm not gonna argue with that, but it's one of the components. So just like, we believe that just like in digital, data needs to be more important, and data needs to be able to be used to define audiences, not just one or two or just standardized audiences, but any audiences. They should be able to target those audiences. audiences. One of the things we haven't really talked about here is fragmentation in television, so the fact that more and more channels, more and more devices, so the audience is still there, but it's in many different places, so you need to build it back up. That needs to be part of it too. Optimization is an important part of it. If you go and you build a plan, you want to build a plan for a client, you really need to make sure that that plan is optimal and delivers the audience that they're looking for. And on the other side, somebody was mentioning this morning that from an inventory holder side, it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. You have all these people that want an audience here and there and everywhere. It's already really hard to fit that all together. And then the next thing that's going to happen is whatever plan you had for ratings and forecasting goes out the window the next day because the audience will move. And so you constantly have to adjust. And so you need automation to solve for all of that. It's just not just automation. It's not just like, oh yeah, let's put a computer and do business as usual, at least not in our view. So those are the 5 pillars of what we believe programmatic television advertising is. So then let's talk a little bit about television versus digital. So, because television is different than digital. And so it shouldn't be a transplant of whatever is going on in digital to television, and that's the end-all be-all. One thing, this side, one of the very powerful things about television is the reach and the simultaneous impact that you can create on television. So there was an article in Ad Age, I believe only a couple of weeks ago, where they looked, and this is US, these are US numbers, but I'm thinking they're probably applicable to everywhere, including here, where they looked at adult audience during a day, and they looked at media consumption minute by minute, and they looked at where these adult audiences were consuming media from. I believe, if I remember correctly, 72% of these audience media consumption was on television. I think 10%, I think, Facebook, 5% Pandora and YouTube together. Put that in other terms. If these top 20 websites were television programs, and that's what's shown here, then Facebook on any day would be equivalent of the Today Show. YouTube on any given day would be, and that's 4.4 million impressions, I think, in the US. YouTube on any given day would be the equivalent of the 5, which is a show on Fox News. So television has this unique power to be massive, to create massive reach, simultaneous, unduplicated reach. And whatever we do with programmatic, we shouldn't destroy that value. We shouldn't just take something from digital and just, no, that's how we got to do it because that's how we do it in digital. We have to protect our value here. There are more differences. So we are looking at a couple here. So there's also similarities, but these are stacks of 2 columns that show on 5 different criteria where television and digital are either the same or comparable at least, and different. So just go through them real quick. Data. So both, I think they're comparable because in both digital and TV, you can use first-party data, you can use third-party data. You could argue that digital is sometimes better in terms of data and being able to target, but then again, you could also argue, Paul Haddad from Cablevision this morning showed us how powerful and how rich data can be in television. It's authenticated data, even better than digital data. So I'm going to say that's a tie. Targeting. So in digital, targeting is always one-on-one. Everything is session-based. Television, not so much. We're going to talk about linear addressable. And addressable is an important part of the television ecosystem, and it should be a part of the television ecosystem. But it's not that tomorrow every ad on television is going to be targeted on a one-on-one basis. That may never happen. Some of it will be national, some of it will be regional, some of it will be targeted. So that's a very different system, very different way of looking at things. Aggregation, and this is a little bit of a technical point, but it's almost digital and television are very different if you look at how you optimize, because in digital you take an audience and now you go find impressions against that audience. And in television you have a schedule, it's a fixed schedule, and you are projecting audiences on that fixed schedule. Very different. Optimization, so in digital you can optimize on cost per action, you can do all kinds of things. But in television we believe you should optimize on cost per thousand, or cost per audience, targeted audience, and that's what you should deliver. Automation, very, very different. Digital, the web, relatively open environment. Everybody that can go to Amazon and rent some space there can put up an ad server, and everybody can get there, and it's open, and there's no funny stuff going on. Digital, as we all know, is much more proprietary, much more closed. There's existing systems, there's traffic systems, billing systems, and we don't want to go and say, oh, throw them all out the window, and now you have to start all over again with some new system, because that will be madness. And so we want to be able to do this programmatic solution in television, keeping those systems whole, just augmenting and enhancing them. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a very important point. Then, if we see, and this is what we have seen over the last couple of years, if we look at programmatic television advertising, one of the most important things, other than automation, is this notion that you shift from a unit, I call it a unit-based world, to an audience-based world. So in television, traditionally, we're thinking about linear schedules, and we have a unit in daytime at news, and that's how we think, and that's how we schedule. And that's how we sell to and transact. But we're trying to shift that and move it to a place where you can buy audiences, not units. A unit is a carrier. It's a way to deliver an audience. It's not necessarily, it shouldn't necessarily, in our opinion, be a goal in itself. But this is quite a big shift, but it has a number of advantages, because audiences are, and I think this morning we talked a little bit about this, audiences are much more stable than individual schedules. If you have an individual schedule, the audience moves constantly. So the audiences as a whole are probably not changing that much, but it's not like these people massively move to the other part of the world or stop watching television. It's just that they watch different stuff. They may watch it on different devices. They may watch different shows. We saw this morning that even between two shows in 1 week, the audience may have shifted completely. So if you're able to turn that around and sell the audience, that's better for everybody, because it's better for the buyer, because they have a more stable product that they're buying. It's also better for the sellers, the inventory owners, because they now can combine fragmented audiences across different networks, across different devices, and deliver it as a whole. So it's ultimately better for everybody. And it also is better because we all know multi-screen. We know that people are shifting and consuming media on different screens. If you are stuck to a unit-based way of transacting, it's really hard to combine them, because there are no such, what's the unit on an iPad? People watch it at different times. But however, if you look at it all as audiences, it's much easier to combine it and sell it as a whole. But this is a big shift, because this is not how people are traditionally buying or thinking or even executing. So I'm a product person, so I like to look at, if I talk about abstract things, I like to see what it looks like. So I have an example here of what a plan looks like if something is an audience-based plan. This could be on broadcast television. So note there is a budget, there is a target CPM. So this may be somebody wants to run a campaign. This is how they would specify what they would want. Note that there is no context in here. There's no news, there's no, I'm buying 5 units here, 6 there. It's about audiences, it's about budget, it can be about target number of impressions. And then the audience definition can be based on existing data, demographic data, but it can go deeper, it can go income level data. The more rich the data is that you put in it, the more finer you can target and better can you define your audience. And then there's maybe some specification about start date, end dates, maybe some hiatus days or hiatus weeks, but this is it. There will never be the mention or the notion of unit. It's really not necessary anymore. Now, in reality, context is important. So this is oversimplifying things. So there will be ways to sort of say, well, but I want that audience, and yes, you're right. Maybe I shouldn't care where it is consumed, but I really don't want to avoid these types of shows, or I want to do this and that and the other thing. So there will be, of course, a compromise here, but this is really trying to go to an audience now this audience will be delivered to broadcast television. So it's not like this is on demand or anything. It's just projected differently and sold differently. That makes sense. In order to do that, you need automation in places that you didn't need it before, because it's really hard to deliver this without automation. So for example, the value of your inventory, you can't say anymore, I'm having a unit on news and it's X. That's the value, because that's just what I think the value is. Because that unit could deliver all kinds of different audiences. And depending on how in demand these audiences are and how much pressure there is, the value of that unit can be very, very different. And so you need some system to keep track of that and to be able to make sure that everything is still whole. You need to be able to forecast. We talked about the audience moving around even on a weekly, daily basis. So you need to be very aware and understanding how that all moves. You need to know that almost in real time. You need to optimize both for the client as well as for the media seller, because the media seller has this jigsaw puzzle. He's trying to deliver all these audiences, and he wants to do it in the most efficient way. And you want to be able to measure outcomes where you can to look at the effect of all of this. Again, I have some examples that help me understand all this conceptual stuff a little bit better. And this is where we lost the new presentation. So I'll describe what we should have seen here. So, if somebody sells an audience, so let's say 20 million impressions against a certain audience, what you'll see is there's a pacing line, an ideal pacing line that you are going to deliver against. In reality, you're going to be under or overshooting against that pacing line constantly, because things change, ratings change, audiences move. And so you need a system that automatically, if you're going under your pacing line, you're going to go up, throw some more units at it. If you're over-delivering, you're going to slow down. And so you need a lot of automation there. I'm going to jump to our products real quick here. We have a product called High Yield, and it has different flavors. And the reason why it has different flavors is because television is not one gigantic system. You have national, local, targeted, not targeted. And so there's different flavors of that product for all these different unique situations. But they're all very similar, so you can combine them easily. And it's also a little bit driven by the US market, because this reflects the state of the US media market, where you have local broadcast, national broadcast, you have these affiliates. That may be different here, it may be different in Europe. But so we have systems for MVPDs, for people that have local affiliate inventory. We have systems for local broadcast stations. We have systems for cable networks. We also have a special system for linear addressable, because linear addressable is even more complicated, because linear addressable says, well, you have a unit, but depending on what set-top box is watching, there's maybe a different ad that gets switched in. That's an even bigger, more complicated jigsaw puzzle. So we have a system that automates that. In the light of time, let's go to my last slide here. So there's two things here. First, we think programmatic television is going to be an important tool in the television media marketplace. And I'm not only saying that because somebody in advertising age said $10 billion in 3 years from now or 2 years from now, because frankly that's easy to say, but we see it every day. We have a business that does programmatic for 3-4 years now on television, a national product in the US, Audience Express. It's growing, there's a lot of demand for it. We see with our partners, we see a lot of real demand. So we think this is a real thing. This is not some concept that's not going to really catch on. And we're very excited. We like to go into markets with partners rather than us say, well, we figured everything out. This is what you got to do. We haven't figured everything out. The markets are different. This is a very new product. So we like to partner. So we're very excited about partnering with Forus to go and take programmatic television advertising to the Canadian market as well. With that, how did I do with time? Okay.